These are arguably two of the strongest women in Jujutsu Kaisen, and even though it's been covered before, it's still highly debated. And since these are two of my favorite characters in terms of power scaling, I thought, why not make a video breaking down this fight? What would happen if they were to run the ones? In this video, we will be showcasing their strengths and weaknesses, and then ultimately figuring out who would win if Yuki and Yorozu fought. Honestly, I don't think this is a super complicated fight, at least not what people make it out to be. I think it really boils down to like one essential point, and we'll get to that soon. For now, let's just cover Yuki's scaling. Yuki is actually a monster. I'm sure at this point, you guys should be aware of Star Rage, which is obviously Yuki's technique. If not, or maybe you don't remember, I'll explain it quickly. Yuki's technique allows her to add virtual mass to herself, or her Shikigami Garuda. To put it simply, virtual mass adds fake mass to Yuki. The reason why it would be fake is because it doesn't make her heavier. It increases her strength, but wouldn't add on weight or durability to her body. So she simply outputs the virtual mass. Now, if she surpasses a certain threshold of mass, it will affect her. But it literally has to be an insane amount. And well, that practically leads to her becoming a literal black hole. She essentially has a self-destruct win con, because she can drag her opponent down with her. With Star Rage, Yuki was able to piece up someone like Kenjaku, who is a major threat to almost everyone else in the cast. But it's not only that Yuki can add so much mass that she'll one-shot you, but because of the nature of her technique, she can defy concepts. So someone like Kenjaku, whose fighting style relies on the cursed techniques of the spirits he's captured, that fighting style is completely countered by Yuki, because she doesn't have to figure out how to beat his spirit's techniques. She just defies them, which is obviously the win con Yuki's always going to have against anyone. In this case, Yorozu's armor isn't going to be doing anything if Yuki can land a hit on her. Like, Yuki definitely should be respected. She had Kenjaku doubting himself. He was doubting if he could beat Yuki or not. That alone is a sufficient testament to her strength and prowess as a sorcerer. In terms of combat, Yuki is capable of one-shotting people like Kenjaku. If she aims for the head and lands, you're done. Unless her Star Rage is weakened, like it was against Kenjaku. Even if you're able to react and block to an attack, say goodbye to your arms, because that's precisely what happened to Kenjaku. He tried blocking with his arms, and they just got obliterated. The only downside is what I mentioned earlier, which is if Yuki gets damaged, her Star Rage weakens, or by her using RCT, can slow Star Rage down. Kenjaku's gravity wasn't a problem at all for Yuki. She was able to easily outspeed him with his gravity, and was still holding her ground despite being extremely injured. The other things in her arsenal are things like Simple Domain, the Domain Expansion, RCT, Garuda, which is her Shikigami. So she's in a similar situation to Yuta, where if you fight her, it's gonna be a 2v1, just like how it is with Yuta and Rika. Of course, with her domain, we're not sure what it does, but she could clash with Yorozu if she summons domain. And she also has the anti-domain defense with Simple Domain. I definitely think Yuki is in the upper echelon of sorcerers. She's one of the few registered special grades, but there is a statement that people use for Yuki, which I don't agree with, which is basically where it's stated that Yuki and Yuta are on the same level. This to me isn't to be taken literal, as in Yuki and Yuta have the same amount of power, but that they're both special grade. Because the point of the statement Maki made was literally just explaining that Kenjaku is hard to beat, even with sorcerers who are special grade, which guess who are special grade? Guess who are both on that level? Yuta and Yuki. Not only that, the other translation, which is the official one, says rank, not level, like it does in the alternate translation that people use to push this agenda. The reason why I'm bringing it up is because I know some people use this statement or think this is true, so I wanted to debunk that and show why I won't be using Yuta as any connector for Yuki. Now let's talk about Yorozu. Straight away, let's talk about the most controversial point when it comes to Yorozu scaling, and this is kind of the make or break for a lot of people to decide if she can beat Yuki or not. I'll be giving both perspectives, so you guys don't have to worry about me only covering one side of the story. The controversy lies in the fight with 15-finger Maguna, and essentially people think Yorozu has the upper hand because she was able to outspeed Maguna with her armor. But people disagree with this for multiple reasons. One of them is that Maguna said he's going to be taking 10 shadows on a test drive, and that Maguna has to let himself get hit to be able to adapt to Yorozu, which would be discounting any of the supposed feats Yorozu had on Sukuna. This doesn't make any sense to me at all. First of all, Sukuna could have tested 10 shadows on Ryu, but didn't, which means Yorozu had a certain threshold of power, good enough for Sukuna to actually test 10 shadows on her. When Sukuna says he's going to test 10 shadows on Yorozu, that doesn't imply that Sukuna is holding back his stats, and there is nothing that backs that up, which we'll get into here in a sec. For adaptation, Sukuna doesn't need to get hit to adapt. It only speeds up the process. To me, the most obvious point is that Sukuna is legitimately getting outsped in some of these interactions because Sukuna doesn't let himself get hit. Like in the Jogo fight, Sukuna is an extremely egotistical, arrogant character. He's not just gonna let himself get slammed for fun. That to me is so crazy that people think he's straight up letting Yorozu get free hits on him. That isn't in character for Sukuna at all. With that being said, these hits that Yorozu lands on Sukuna are just her literally outspeeding him to the point where he can't even block these attacks, which is perfectly consistent for Yorozu because she already is a high tier Heian era fighter. And in base, she exchanged blows with Sukuna, both of them blocking each other's hits. With her armor, she gets a mega boost, so it just makes sense for her to start outspeeding him. In terms of damage, the few hits Yorozu landed on Sukuna weren't anything revolutionary. Don't get me wrong, she's still damaging a 15-finger Sukuna, but they left scuffs on him. And he did get sent flying, but let's be realistic, she didn't do too much damage. So in terms of AP, we don't really have anything strong for Yorozu, but in her domain, she has the perfect sphere, which obviously will one-shot anything it touches. So that's really the ace up her sleeve. On top of that, this is the same Sukuna who intervened when Kenjaku was about to get one-shotted by Gojo. So we definitely have a very good basis to say that Yorozu would outspeed Yuki, as she's faster than 15-finger Meguna and Kenjaku, who is on par with Yuki. And the reason why I say and Kenjaku is because she's outspeeding Meguna, and Meguna's outspeeding Kenjaku, and obviously she would outspeed Yuki. But in terms of power, of course, Yuki takes that easily. Now, let's finally talk about who would win if they fought. We'll break down their advantages and weaknesses. Overall, Yuki seems more favorable because her strength is just OP. On top of that, she has a domain, RCT, and a very complete moveset. However, Yorozu has a speed advantage. That said, it would still be difficult for Yorozu since Yuki also has Garuda, which can be pretty dangerous. Now, just to get this out of the way, because I don't want to give a one-sided conclusion, if you believe the feats Yorozu displayed against Sukuna are false, meaning he was really holding back, then this is a one-sided fight. Yuki just wins, and that's the end of it. But if those feats are valid, then the fight isn't so simple. I think this would quickly turn into a domain clash if Yuki can't land a hit on Yorozu. She isn't just going to stand there and get beat up. She'll want to gain the advantage. Generally, domain clashes are decided by refinement and power. And in this case, there's really no clear answer as to who would win unless you say, oh, well, with virtual mass, she's stronger, so she wins the domain clash. That isn't too valid for me personally, because once again, it's not real mass. She's not getting heavier from it. So I don't know if that would apply in terms of domain clash. If it does, then sure, she'll win the domain clash. If Yorozu wins the domain clash, Yuki can, at best, buy a few seconds with simple domain, and that's it. We don't know how fast Perfect Sphere is, but Yuki would have to deal with Yorozu's speed and Perfect Sphere at the same time, which doesn't look good for her. However, the fight could still end in a tie, because if Yuki is going down, she's bringing Yorozu down with her by creating another black hole. Unless Perfect Sphere touches her and she's just gone, then Yorozu would definitely win. If Yuki wins the domain clash, she probably wins the fight. Her AP is more than enough to take down Yorozu, and if her domain guarantees a hit from Star Rage, then it might be wraps for Yorozu, assuming her domain works that way. To simplify, if Yuki lands a clean hit, she wins. If they domain clash, Yorozu wins. But it could still end in a tie if Yuki manages to create a black hole before she dies. Obviously, if Yorozu can hit her with the Perfect Sphere before that, then Yorozu wins. Since this is a pretty close fight, I'd like to know what you guys think in the comments. But that's all for this video. If you enjoyed it, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.